Hey everybody, welcome to Bestie Book Reviews. I'm here with my bestie Mandy.
And I'm here with my bestie Jessica.
So today is our weekly Bestie Book Review where we go over all the books that we read this week. So grab your favorite beverage. I've got tea, it's almost all gone. You've got coffee. And your favorite coaster, and let's sit down and talk about the books that we read this week. So Mandy, how was your reading week?
My reading week was pretty good. I had some 5-star reads. I read 8 books this week. How about you?
I read 10, but one was a trilogy, so technically I guess we'd call it 8. When we talk about it, it'll be 8. And they were all, I don't think I had anything higher than 4 or 4.5. So it was an okay reading week. Yeah, it was okay. So
Okay.
We'll see. Nothing blew my mind this week. So make sure that you hit that subscribe button. We are still doing our Road to 1K giveaway, and we will be giving away the Candy Steiner Bell Book Box edition of Make Me Hate You to one of our lucky subscribers when we hit 100 subscribers. So make sure that you hit that subscribe button. Did I say subscribe enough for all of you? Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Also, if your account is set to private, please make sure to leave us an emoji or a comment so that we know who you are, because if your account is set to private, it doesn't show up as a subscriber, as far as I can tell anyway. So make sure you do that. So Mandy, let's talk books.
Okay, I'm starting my 1-minute timer. My book was Craving Constellations by Nicole Jacquelyn. This is about Brenda. She is running/escaping from a horrific, abusive husband. She's taking her 4-year-old daughter with her, and she is going back to her dad's motorcycle club, the motorcycle compound area that she actually grew up in. And as soon as she gets there, she runs into Dragon, who was her one-night stand. And that is where her daughter came from. Let's see. This book, I loved it. It was a 5-star read for me. And this just kind of goes through what everybody knows the second she gets there with her daughter that the daughter is Dragon's. And so this just has a lot of complications for what does that mean for the motorcycle club, because her dad is the vice president. So this is considered a pretty big disrespect thing that Dragon did. The motorcycle club is also mad at Brenda for this as well. So this just kind of deals with not only him finding out that he suddenly has this 4-year-old daughter, but also how this works out with the motorcycle club and kind of their rules or unspoken rules to some degree. Yeah. But I really liked it. It was really good. It has some angst to it, but it's good. I would definitely check triggers, because it does deal with some horrific abuse. And there's some other things that happen in this book too that could be potentially upsetting.
Yeah, it was a 5-star read for me when I read it too. I love that book. I do want to do a reread of it. So
yeah, the little thing that kind of drove me nuts is I didn't understand. I get that she just didn't want that life, but she ends up in a way worse situation, and she stays there for so long without telling him about his kid. And that just kind of bugs me. She knew how to get a hold of him, and she still chose not to tell him. And I don't know. I just think that's wrong. I don't think that's the choice a mom should make. The child deserves to know the dad.
Yeah. Yeah. In everyday life. Yep.
I know, but sometimes those things are hard to look past for me, and that's just one of them.
Yeah, and I can see why. But for me, I'm it was a bad situation, and yes, she was in a bad situation. But a woman who's in a bad situation can't always see the forest through the trees, and they, when you're in that situation, and they kind of talk themselves, it's abuse because it's abuse, and so it's a cycle. So I can see both sides. So I loved it though. It was great.
I do too. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so you ready for my first one?
Yes.
Okay.
Ready?
Set my timer. Okay, so I read Consider Me by Becka Mack. I love this book cover. This is the cover to cover book box edition. But I didn't love the book. It's a hockey romance. Carter Becka I've heard the name. I didn't realize how big of a book this was. Everybody supposedly absolutely loves this book. I don't get it. It's too long. It's almost 450 pages of Carter being a man whore, and then Olivia not trusting him, and then they sleep together, and then she's like, oh, but no, I shouldn't have done that. I don't trust you. And then he tries to prove himself, and then they do it again, and then she's like, oh, no, don't trust you. I didn't get it. Also, short is not a personality trait. I cannot stand when an author makes somebody short, and then that's all they do is they make fun of her for being short through the whole thing. I don't get it. Also, if you're 5'2" and the man you're dating is 6'4", he cannot just bend his neck to kiss you. He has to bend his whole body. So saying things like he bent his neck doesn't work. I had a hard time with this book. I really did. I wanted to love it. I did. It was too long. I gave it 2 stars. I was so annoyed by it.
Oh, wow. It's such a beautiful cover, though.
It's a beautiful cover. Might just keep the book for the cover.
Yeah, just leave it on your bookshelf so it can sit there and look pretty.
I know. I don't have room on my bookshelves to keep books that I don't love. So we'll see what I do with it. I mean, I was like, maybe I was being too critical because I was at work and I was working and I couldn't really pay attention while I was listening. But at the same time, come on. It was long. It just never ended. So, yeah. Oops. I love hockey. It didn't work. Just didn't work. Plus, okay.
Tell us how you really feel, Jessica.
She was a teacher. She was a PE teacher in high school. Half the stuff that happened in the book when she was at school would never happen. Never happen in a high school. No. It was just a hard no. No. Mm-mm. No. Okay. All right, done.
Let's move on.
Moving on.
Okay, setting my timer. My next book is called Fighter's Kiss by Sienna Blake. This is number 3 in the Irish Kiss series. This follows Jacquelyn, who I've talked about the other 2 books in this series. He is a friend of theirs. He is the MMA fighter. He was in a horrific car accident because he walks in on his wife cheating on him with his rival opponent. And so he gets drunk and drives. So he understands he has no one to blame but himself. His car accident's pretty horrific and his body is really beat up, but he is determined to come back from this. And so he is obsessed, like obsessed with training and pushing his body, even though doctors and things keep telling him like, no, you shouldn't be doing this. You need to slow down. He is obsessed with just getting back into the fighting ring and being able to get back his title. He goes through his assistants very quickly because he's very demanding. He has a rule book. Man, I didn't even get to the girl's name before the timer went off. So anyways, River gets hired to be his personal assistant and she's pretty much ready to quit right away. And there's just a lot of back and forth between the 2 of them. But she starts to kind of see underneath his like hard persona. I will say there was times where I just didn't feel the connection between the 2 of them. So that kind of made it a 4-star read for me. I just didn't quite feel that connection. I have a quote for you though, because she's trying not to like him. Mm-hmm. And in that way, like just keeping it strictly like he's my boss. And so she says, well, isn't that just great? He's fantastic at kissing and opening doors. It just cracked me up because she's like trying so hard not to like him. But it was still a solid 4-star read. I would definitely recommend the whole series. I really enjoyed it.
Okay. I know I want to get to those, especially because they're Irish.
He was just a little too grumpy.
Oh, then I'm going to love it.
He was very closed off. And so the development of their relationship just didn't seem to make, I don't know. Yeah. It's just a little off for me. That's just what kept it from being a 5-star read.
Okay.
Okay,
ready?
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Always.
All right.
So.
Okay. So my next book was a reread for me. This is Fear Me by BB Reid. This is a high school bully romance, but this is dark. It does not read like high school. If you've seen any of my videos, you know I do not read high school at all. At all. But this one is about Lake and Kieran. This is a series, so the second book is also about Lake and Kieran, and then you see the other people in the series that go on after that. So Kieran has been put in jail the previous year. He believes that Lake is who tipped off the police, and that's why he was in jail. And he has bullied her for the last 10 years. When she was like 8, he pushed her off the monkey bars and broke her arm. Like, he's been a dick to her whole life. And so now he's back. And now that he's back, he's going to get revenge. And he's basically told her that she's his and she belongs to him. And he's going to take what's his and what he feels is owed to him. And so that's how it starts out. He's a big basketball star. It's just, that's the setup for it. It's 5 stars. There's so much more to the story though. Once you really get into it, the series gets into it. Definitely check triggers. There's huge dub con, non-con situations going on in here, as well as
no wonder you like it.
Yep, as well as other things that are gonna could set people off very easily. So definitely check triggers. It's one of the only high school. There's like, I think I can count like on my hand like 3 high school romances that I've ever read. But it ends. The first book ends the high school career, and then they're older. So yeah. Okay.
Okay, my next book is On the Island by Tracy Garvis Graves. Had to make sure I got that right. Anna is 30. She is a high school teacher. She is going with TJ to his family's island that they're vacationing on. I don't know if they actually own the island. I think they're just vacationing there. TJ is 16. He's like 3 months out of remission from having cancer. And so she's going for the tutor to tutor him for the summer and get him kind of caught up so he doesn't have to repeat a grade. And the parents have already flown. They're flying together. So there's like all these delays while they're flying there. And one thing to note is Anna takes this job because she's kind of struggling with her current boyfriend. They've been together for a long time and she's like ready for marriage. She's ready for babies. And he's just not quite there yet. And she's starting to question, like, is he ever going to be there? Like, what's happening? So TJ and Anna get to where they're supposed to kind of be, and they are on a seaplane that's supposed to take them to the island where his parents are. Their pilot has a heart attack and he dies, and they crash land in the ocean. So this is their survival story on an island, and they are there for quite some time, and eventually they start to have feelings for each other and they decide to act on them. So that is that story. It's really good. I really enjoyed it.
And nothing happens between them until he's of age. Even though they're on an island, and it wouldn't really friggin' matter because they're on an island, but okay.
Yes.
So, yeah.
It's I mean, really it would the survival aspect and everything, and it just made me think like, ooh, what would I do? What would I do? What would I do? Like, ooh, should I handle that?
I know. And so I did love that one, but then when I read Unseen Messages, that I was looking for that because there was just not enough of On the Island. I needed more, and that's where I got that with Unseen Messages. I needed more of that.
I need to read that.
Yeah. You will eventually. I know you will. So, okay. Next.
Ready?
I'm ready. I read Unexpected Reality by Kaylee Ryan. So this was an interesting book. This was 3.5 stars for me. I couldn't quite tell who the heroine was going to be in the beginning. It was probably about 25% into the book before I realized who the heroine was. But this you're following a guy. He's a construction worker. He owns his own construction company. He has a one-night stand with a girl who has no family. And then we fast forward a few months later, and there is like this horrible storm, and he comes across an accident, and that girl is in the accident. He finds her, and she's pregnant at this point, and then they bring her to the hospital, and he stays with her. The story itself is actually between him as a single father and to this newborn baby, and a pediatric nurse who was a friend of his sister. So it gets very confusing as to who the actual heroine is. But I did enjoy the story. It almost felt a little insta-lovey once you got towards the end because it just kind of came out of nowhere. But I did enjoy it. It still was 3.5 stars. I still liked it.
Okay.
There were some things that happened at the end that I was like, really? Which kind of kept bringing it down. I was like, really? So,
Yeah.
But it was still good. I still enjoyed it. So, okay, tell me about your next one.
Okay, my next book is Uncharted, and it's the novella to On the Island, but it's to be read after On the Island. This, if you read On the Island, there is mention to Seth, a millionaire who possibly lived on this island for a little bit of time, who has gone missing and kind of just vanished and is believed to be dead. This is his story. And it features Kalia. That's his romantic interest in this story. And Seth shows up at TJ and Anna's house and tells them his story. And it is really captivating and very interesting. And honestly, I would have loved a full-length novel of his story with Kalia.
Whoa, you stopped way before the timer.
I didn't use my full minute. I'm so proud of myself.
So proud of you. I do want to go back and read that. That sounds good.
You really should. It was good. I was trying to tell Jessica about this book, and she's like, "What's the point?"
It was
Be with me, and I'm like, "It's not about Anna and TJ."
I was like, "Look, if they're not on an island, I don't want to read it." So
no, it was super good, and it's a novella. I mean, it was fun to see TJ and Anna a little bit in the future, but it's not that much further into the future than how On the Island ends.
Okay. I'll have to read it. I will. I'll read it. Okay, so my next book. My next book is called The Mistake, and it's by R.G. Angel. So this is about Ava, and Ava she goes out, she's just prim and proper girl. Her best friend Ethan tells her, go out and have fun. So this takes place in England. So she goes out and goes to a bar. She meets a guy. She gives him a fake name. She tells him her name is Mary, and he tells her his name, and they end up hooking up that night and having a one-night stand. So the next day, Ethan comes over, and he is the gay best friend, and he's like going on and on, asking her all these questions, and she's giving, all these details because he wants the details, even like size measurements, which authors never give don't ever give size measurements in books. But she gives the size measurements, and they're going on and on about this guy. And then they have like this big soiree at his parents' mansion that night, and they show up, and the guy is there, and he is Hugo's half brother. She is pretending, or no, Hugo is the guy's name. He is the half brother. It's Ethan's half brother. She's pretending to be Ethan's fiance because Ethan doesn't want his parents to know that he's gay. Then she finds out she's pregnant. So it's quite the story. I gave it 3 stars. It had a lot going on. It was still good, but Hugo is a dick, and he is horrible to Ava until about the 80% mark, maybe even the 90% mark of the book.
Isn't that what you love, though?
Huh?
Isn't that what you love in books?
Oh, yeah, I loved it. Not everybody's going to love it, but I loved it. So,
okay.
There was just a lot of grammatical errors in this book. A lot. And I work with the friend that I work with, that you and I've talked about this, that I work with. She was an editor for a long time. And so we had this conversation, and I was like, is it different if it's an English author, as in a British author? Is it different? Like, is there different grammar type things? And she was like, and I said, well, because, like if we're saying something, if you're like, oh, I'm talking, hey, that book. And I'll be like, oh, speaking of that book. But she would be like, instead of saying that, she'd say talking of that book. And I'm like, that don't make sense. But there were other grammatical things that were happening in here that just did not, it would throw you out of the book. So no. And I was showing my friend, and she's like, no, she needed a better editor. So,
oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Just things that I was like, I volunteer. I will edit. I will be your editor. Just let me be your editor. I can fix it. But she didn't call, so I didn't.
I'm sorry.
So anyhow, but I did. Yeah. I liked him. He was a dick, but yeah. So next.
All right. My next book is In Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. It is a favorite book of mine now, a 5-star favorite read. I absolutely love this. I've seen other people talking about this book, and so I decided to read it, and oh my gosh, it's so good. So I listened to this on Audible. This is about childhood best friends, Macy and Elliot. And the book starts off with them running into each other, and it's been 11 years since they've seen each other. we automatically know there's some tension and things happening here. And so the story basically is told, it's basically like reading two stories at once. So you are reading along like them meeting each other right now, or they run into each other at this coffee shop 11 years later. And so their story goes forward from there. But then we also are alternating back and forth between the past when they first met when they were kids and how their relationship started. We know that there was some awful fallout, but we don't know what it was. We also know that the two of them still are very, very much attracted to each other, and that there is a lot of unresolved feelings, and quite possibly like they are still in love with each other. And Macy, to complicate things a little bit, is engaged to Sean, who has a daughter, but their relationship, they're everybody's just kind of going through the motions here, and you can tell definitely that the passion is not in that relationship that should be, and Macy's aware of that as well. And so she's got a lot of stuff to deal with, but oh my gosh, it was so good. And I cried. There were some twists that I did not see coming, and oh my gosh, like tears. Oh, so good.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll talk about that after the video.
You know what? I think I'm going to do a convincing my bestie, and I'm going to try and do books that I think will make you cry and see if I can get you to cry.
Oh, you can do that, but
I know your heart of stone won't cry.
No, it's I feel about that author the way I feel about the other author that we
just stop. I love her.
I'm serious.
She's
I
good.
don't. What I've read I don't like. Never
Okay.
No, they don't. Some authors work for people and some authors don't. That one doesn't
Love
work
in
for me.
Other Words was fantastic. It is a favorite of mine.
Okay. Good. Next.
Yes, let's move on before
I'm ready. My snobbish ways. Yeah, I know. My snobbish ways, I know. Yep. Okay. So
you're getting 30 seconds this time.
Shush. I read Reborn yesterday by Tessa Bailey. So this is about Jenny. Jenny works in a she runs she's an undertaker. She runs what do we call it? A funeral home. And this body has been brought in of this young guy, and he's absolutely gorgeous. And she's like getting ready to embalm him, and she's having a hard time embalming him, or getting ready to do that. So she's getting ready to plug that thing in to shove the formaldehyde into him, and he sits up on her table. He doesn't have a pulse, but he sits up on her table. So Jonas is our vampire hero. And Jenny is just different. She's like, she's really into like Lauren Bacall and all these old time actresses, and she makes her own clothes, and she's really into that, and that gets kind of explained towards the end of the book. But they have this instant connection, and he wants to wipe her memory later that night, but he can't bring himself to do it, and so he keeps coming back, and then he has to protect her because now she knows about them, and it just goes on. I actually really, really enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would. It was a solid 4 stars. I want to read the other 2 books that are in the series, but and it's different from what Tessa Bailey normally writes, so I didn't know if it was going to be any good, but I really liked it. It was just the fact that he was this hot Irish. Was he Irish? I remember he had green eyes, but yeah, he just sits up on her table and she's getting ready to embalm him. Like, poor girl. So yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Great. It's great.
Okay, my next read is Hard Pass by Brenda Rothert. This was only a 3.5-star read for me. I absolutely love the idea of the plot where Saria, her cat, has passed away, and she decides, well, I better text my ex because it was our cat together. They'd been together for 3 years, and he cheated on her, so she's pretty bitter. She had deleted all of his information, so she's trying to go off memory, and she accidentally texts the wrong number. And she then, because she's like prompting, she's like, you're sorry, that's all you're gonna say? And then the person's like, well, I'm sorry, did I know? Do I know you? Do I know this cat? Like, I'm confused. And so then through more exchange, she figures out, oh my gosh, I've texted the wrong person. But they've kind of just had a little bit of a back and forth, so they continue to text each other. And it keeps up for a while. And he tells her that his name is Rob because he's actually a very famous hockey player named Nash. And he doesn't want to risk her knowing who he really is just because of that whole like privacy thing. And so they keep this up. But Saria gets a job at working for the Mavericks, his hockey team that he plays on. And he figures out right away who she is, but he doesn't tell her. There is a ton of other stuff going on in this book that I found myself just skimming through. Also, please check triggers if you're going to read this book because there is a side character, and I think this is happening in the books before this, that has terminal cancer. While I get that you want to have some side characters with things going on, there was just too much other stuff for me personally and I just started skimming. I felt like the plot was fantastic, but the writing just fell flat for me.
Yeah, I hate when that happens.
Yeah.
Okay, so my next book. So this one was Beyond the Moon by Catherine Taylor. I wanted to love this one so much, and I did enjoy it, but it's billed as a romance, and it's not a romance. It's a historical fiction because the characters spend 95% of the book apart. So that doesn't work. But the idea was great. So this is about Robert, who is a World War I. I think he was a commander in the British Army, and he is in the trenches in France, and he gets hurt, or something happens, and he gets sent to the hospital in England, and he is blind because of like nerves, and he's shaking all the time. In the meantime, in 2017, medical student. She's a medical student. Her name is Louisa. She loses her grandma, who is the last person in her family, and she goes on a drunken spree. Like she gets drunk on a hill and she falls down the hill, and then the doctors think she was trying to commit suicide. So they admit her to the psych ward at the psych hospital. So the psych hospital is the hospital he was admitted to back in the day. And one day she goes out to the old ruins, where his hospital is kind of like in the middle of this, like the hospital surrounds it. It's kind of in the middle. And she goes upstairs, like she's checking it out, and she goes upstairs and she finds him in his bed. And so it's a time travel novel, but they spend all this time apart, like the whole book, they're apart. So as awesome as it was, and getting to see like the differences, you know, we touch base on like the medical system as far as psychiatric care and all of that stuff. And then, you know, read about the trenches and things that happened in World War I in France. You can't call it a romance if they're only together for 3 minutes in the book. It doesn't work. They're together in the middle for like, a wee bitty time. And then they're separate until seriously the last chapter. So I did enjoy the book though. I still gave it 4 stars. It's not a romance. Next.
All right, got my timer set. My next book is A Lie for a Lie by Helena Hunting. This is RJ and Lainey. They meet on a plane on their way to Alaska. Lainey is dressed for Alaska and her scarf gets caught and she like literally falls in RJ's lap. And then she's like choking because the scarf keeps tightening on her. And it just cracked me up how they met because I am super clumsy, so I could totally relate to this. So they end up spending the summer, or a majority of their summer together in Alaska, just the two of them. They have a fling, they have a definite connection. And RJ gets called away on a family emergency and has to leave unexpectedly. And since it's so hurried, proper information is not exchanged. And when he tries to call her while she's still at this cabin, he can't get through because there's been a storm. So we fast forward a year later. Lainey has had RJ's baby and she's working in an aquarium in Chicago, and RJ walks in. You would think that the baby and all of that would be kind of the main drama, but really the big problem is that RJ was not honest with her about who he was. He kept the hockey thing a secret. And so she tried desperately to find him, and all the information she had about him led her nowhere. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the whole premise of the story is that, and them finding themselves back together again and how all that's going to play out. I really enjoyed it. It was a 4-star read for me. Honestly, I didn't really think it was that big of a deal that he didn't tell her he was a hockey player. But I think it's because I've read a lot of sports romances. And so I get where I get where these people are coming from. Like, if you're famous, how do you know that anybody truly likes you for you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And not just
On a
the
side
money
note,
and the fame.
why are you bundled up in a scarf in Alaska in the summer?
Hey, I went to Alaska in the summer, and if you're going out to those glaciers, it can be cold.
She wasn't going to the glacier. She was going to Kodiak. It's like
But
going to Washington.
okay, so you and I are going to disagree on this. I kind of thought it was funny, like that she was so overbundled because she's a huge worrier and all of that. So she's like bundled for that because she didn't know what to expect. And you took it as the author didn't know how to write Alaska, but I just took it differently. You need to calm down. I saw your review on Goodreads, and it was all I could do.
Did you see what I wrote on Goodreads about
Yes, it was all I could do not to comment.
I dare you to comment.
Like, wow, somebody
I can't
needs
handle
to
it.
calm
I'm
down.
sorry. It's the Alaskan in me. She just can't handle it. She just can't.
I know, and she was coming from Seattle, so it's not like she was coming from a super warm climate where she would maybe be confused.
And Kodiak's climate is a lot like Washington State. So, but I mean, but Helena Hunting did not say anywhere that the character didn't know what the weather was going to be like, or that she didn't understand it. If she put that in there, I could have given her the benefit of it out. I love Helena Hunting. I do. It was just that one thing that it's the one thing that drives me insane. I don't know when I became such a book snob. Jeez,
we need to move on.
We do. I'm a book. I can't. When did it
or we'll still be here 2 hours later and you'll still be freaking out about all the wrongs of Alaska.
I know. So let's
I'm starting your timer. Go.
Okay, let's move on. I was trying to find a really good time travel romance this week, and it was really hard. So I read My Outlaw by Linda Lael Miller. So this starts out with Kaylee. She's the age of 7. She's at her grandma's estate in Nevada. And it was built on where this old saloon had been torn down. And her grandma has it's a big estate. So it has a ballroom in it. And the one wall is made of glass. And she looks in the glass and she sees this little boy who's in a saloon. And she can tell he dresses differently and he looks just different, but he's about her age. And and he can see her, but nobody else can see them. And so they have this where they come together and see each other quite often as they're growing up. And so his name, they can write backwards like on a card or whatever and figure out who each other is. So his name is Darby. And as she gets older, there's a separation where she doesn't go to grandma's house, but she finally sees him as an adult in the mirror again. And she does some research and finds out that Darby gets shot and dies not too long after this. And so once she finds that out, she actually time travels back to the Old West and their story begins. So I really liked this one. I gave this one a solid 4 stars. There were a couple of things that were a little odd, but it was really good. I really did like this one.
Did somebody wear mittens?
No. They know how to dress in the Wild West, okay? No, it was really good. It was good. It was good. I liked it a lot. So yeah. Only thing I didn't like is how quick they said they loved each other, which is really hard. But I guess, they described as they've been seeing each other since they were 7. So I get it. But you didn't know anything about each other.
Okay. I am very excited to tell you about my next book.
Please tell me.
It's called Your Dad Will Do.
I've already read it.
Oh, have you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay. I'll set my timer. Okay, this is Your Dad Will Do by Katie Robert. Lily's boyfriend, Max, has cheated on her in the biggest cliche of all time with his secretary. So she is going to go get revenge. And how better to get revenge but by sleeping with his dad? So she shows up at his dad's house and he is not opposed to seeing her. And so basically what happens is she goes in there and the rest of what ensues is that they just have pages and pages and pages and pages of dirty, smutty fun together. And I was here for it. I mean, that's all the book is it's just like there's really not a lot going on. She achieves her goal, and her ex-boyfriend Max walks in on them, and she says, "You're not the only one that calls him daddy now." I absolutely loved it, but it's a smutty novella. Like that's what you're going in for.
A lot of Katie Roberts books have more smut than not. So, yeah. But that was one of my first Katie Robert books that I read, and I was like, okay, that works for me.
Yeah.
So
there's definitely a daddy kink in this book.
You think? Just a little bit.
I still enjoyed it though. It was a 4-star.
Yeah. I saw that this morning. I pulled up Goodreads when I was looking for something, and I was like, Mandy liked it. So
did you not like it?
Oh no, I liked it. I think I gave it 4 stars.
Okay.
I mean, I think I probably wish there was more plot to it, if I, am honest, but it's
I think
good.
You have to realize that when you're reading a novella, though, that you're not going to be able to get a lot of that plot in there.
That's why I tend to like full-length novels, because I want the plot. So that's okay. Okay, so ready for my last. So this was a trilogy that I read. This is by Stella Gray. It starts with Forbidden Bride. So this is the Forbidden series. It is actually her 4th, 5th, and 6th books in the Bolandi brothers, but the 1, 2, and 3 of the Forbidden trilogy. So this is basically a Romeo and Juliet retelling. So this is about Marco and Karina. So Marco is the youngest brother out of the Bolandi brothers. He has the vineyard, which is great and all, that the family runs a vineyard, but he also races cars for the vineyard. And then you have Karina, who is her uncle rules her. He's got her in an arranged marriage. She's getting ready to marry this guy. She's all about, he's taken away all of her books except for her classics. So she's all about Mr. Darcy. She has this, what would J.A. do, which is what would Jane Austen do? She asks herself that quite often in the book, which is really cute, actually. And so they meet, and it's a total Romeo and Juliet. So if you know how Romeo and Juliet kind of goes, then you get the premise of this book. But it's 3 books long. So the premise of the story. So it's 3 books long. But I read them all yesterday, and I enjoyed them. I didn't quite like the plot device in the 3rd one so much, but it worked itself out. So that was good. So they were all 4 stars. So that was what I read. So yeah. So there we go. Okay, so that's all that we have for today. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave us, what kind of an emoji should we have them leave us, Mandy?
Oh, I think we should do something snow themed for Alaska.
Leave us a snowflake emoji or mittens. Oh my gosh.
Is there a mitten emoji?
I think there's a mitten emoji. If you can't find the mitten emoji, do the snowflake emoji. But just for my Alaskan rage, mittens in the comments below. And thank you so much for watching.
Yes, make sure to subscribe and check back on Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays for new videos from us.
And until then,
go read.
Go read.